Back again with some 7-point old school singleton action. Okay, when I last left off, I had just concluded an absolutely epic marathon of a game, which was actually game 2 of the Event 9 finals against Mikl Fi from France. And the game was so long and epic that I actually had to divide it up between 2 parts. And the second game saw me sort of kind of turning the corner against Mikel's early rush of creatures and gradually grinding out a lengthy win, fading a couple of key burn spells kind of in the mid game and eventually countering 2 lethal X spells in the very late game and finishing the game off with a couple of big flyers to finally take it and to draw the match 1 versus 1 apiece. And yeah, after that second game, I was just honestly kind of mentally exhausted, physically exhausted. We'd been playing for about an hour and a half at that point, and we were just pretty much getting started as this was a best of 5. So as I was shuffling up for game 3, I was just thinking, all right, I just got to get kind of a competent draw. I got to draw a few key parts. Actually, the commentators and the commentators for this match, I'll remind everybody, are the guy from the Netherlands named Thomas Meddens, also known as Timmy the Sorcerer, and Ken Fritz from the United States. And they've been doing a stellar job of sort of narrating and calling the action and trying to give the viewers some insight into the plays and to what my opponent and I might be thinking. But one of the things that they were mentioning while Mikl and I were shuffling up for game 3 was how I've failed to draw Moat so far. And Moat is probably among all the cards I have in my deck. It's only a 1-point card. Based on the current rule set, it's actually been moved up to 2 in the current for event number 11, which is going to be underway relatively soon. But Moat is probably the most powerful and decisive card that I can actually draw in this game, outside of a couple of handful of flyers, including a Thunder Spirit, a Mesa Pegasus, a Granite Gargoyle, a Sarah Angel, and a Shivan Dragon. Mikl doesn't really have any way of mounting any type of reasonable offense with creatures as long as Moat is in play. He can still definitely win the game because he's playing with red and he can burn me to death. But he's lacking some of the artifact-based damage that this archetype often uses. He doesn't have a Black Vice, doesn't have Anka Mishra, doesn't have even Copper Tablet. So if I'm able to get Moat in play and protected, it's very, very hard for him to win. And all my test games pretty much showed that this match was almost impossible to lose if I could get Moat down early and protect it. So with that in mind, I'm really, really hoping to just draw Moat and sufficient mana at some point, maybe earlier on in the game. And barring that, just try to weather the storm, land my big fatties, maybe draw Wrath of God, and see how it goes. So we're in the process of shuffling up right here. As before, I'm going to be doing the director's cut commentary where I am going to be allowing Thomas and Ken to narrate the action, and I'll just sort of chime in, pausing sometimes to offer my own introspection, and sometimes just talking kind of while they're still in the middle of doing their narration. So without further ado, game 3 coming up. Sit back, enjoy, and watch it unfold.
So, I mean, we didn't see a Moat. We still have not seen a Moat appearance. I think that's just about the only card in Brian's deck that we didn't see. I mean, he obviously hasn't cast the Air Elemental or the Steel Artifact or the Drake, but
he hasn't used the Lantex yet.
Yeah, or Lantex
For himself, but we did see it. He put it in the bin.
Yeah, he's right about that. I just could not draw Lantex early.
I don't think the Lantex was going to benefit him a whole lot at that point.
Totally right.
We haven't seen the Power Sink or the Spell Blast.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah, we've seen Brian's entire deck.
He's basically right about that. I mean, if you think about the last game, I went down to about 3 or 4 cards left in my deck. I did have Spell Blast and Power Sink in my hand at the very end of the game. But a bunch of these cards that I do have in my deck are quite weak against Mikel's deck. I mentioned before that he wasn't running any of those artifacts, and actually, Steel Artifact, as strong as it is against some archetypes, is just so weak against those static effects like Winter Orb, like Black Vice, and Copper Tablet. Anything that just sort of sits in play and does something nasty to you, the Steel Artifact is not good. And it's kind of one of the reasons why you haven't seen it in a lot of deck lists over the years. But it is very, very powerful in this format, given how many people are running Jam-Day Tome and Jalem Tome and Disrupting Scepter, as well as the artifact creatures Juggernaut and often Su-Chi. So Steel Artifact, I think, is still good enough to main deck. You just kind of need more ways to just interact with artifacts in general. And I don't really want to play with Dust to Dust because it requires 2 targets, and sometimes you just need to get rid of one thing. But they're very correct in terms of how I've drawn most of the deck. I have not summoned Air Elemental yet, but I did draw some of the key key components of my deck against Mikel's deck, and eventually was able to take the game with it. So here we go. We've drawn our 7, and we will see how it goes. Mikl is on the play here, and of course is opting to go first.
I think out of Mikl's deck, we've still yet to see the Thunder Spirit. We haven't seen the Granite Gargoyle. We haven't seen the Juggernaut. And we haven't seen the Earthquake, the Dragon Engine, or the Pyrotechnics.
And it's
or
a
the
Skellion.
Skellion.
Amazing recall from Ken there about figuring out exactly which things Mikl hasn't cast yet.
Oh, yeah, when Mikl was attacking with 3 weenies all at once.
And I'm just going to pause here real quick. Yeah, they're talking about Army of Allah and how Mikl, which Mikl hadn't drawn or cast really in any of the first 2 games. And yeah, that card is very situational, but can often be sort of like akin to a ball lightning, and sometimes can even deal 8 damage out of nowhere. Can be very powerful, particularly combined with the first striking creatures. And I breathe a sigh of relief again when Mikl does not have a turn 1 creature. And looking at my hand this game was just phenomenal. It was easily the best hand that I felt that I had drawn so far in the match. From memory, I believe it was Island, Tropical Island, Felwar Stone, Mishra's Factory, Counterspell, Moat, and Disenchant. And they were talking about Moat. And not only did I draw Moat this game, I don't have a second white to cast it. And in fact, the only white mana I have in my hand right now is the Felwar Stone. But Mikl has demonstrated that he is very, very judicious and careful with his artifact kill. He's actually let me keep a Jalem Tome in play, holding a Disenchant or a Divine Offering to wait for something more impactful. So I'm pretty sure that the Felwar Stone is going to live and provide me with white mana, which means I can definitely keep the hand. The Factory is really, really good early defense. And then most importantly, I literally have the nuts in my hand as far as Mikel's deck. I have Moat, Counterspell, and Disenchant. And if you think about the range of things that Mikl has in his deck to deal with Moat, exactly Moat, he has 2 cards that can get rid of it. He has Chaos Orb and he has Disenchant. And I have Counterspell and Disenchant myself, which means that if I wait until I have 6 mana at least to play my Moat, unless he has exactly Disenchant and Chaos Orb in his hand at that moment, that single Counterspell should be able to protect the Moat and prevent him from attacking me the entire game with any flyers. So really, my entire objective at this point is maintain a high enough life total that I won't die to burn spells and get Moat down with at least 6 mana and ideally 8 and protect it with both those cards. And it's almost impossible for him to win the game. So that is definitely my game plan looking at this hand, and we'll see how it goes.
If he had, employed the Army of Allah, it would have been game over.
And he's pretty big on first strike, right? So
yeah.
So I'm leading with Factory just so I have the opportunity to make it a 3/3 if I need to.
Yeah, it's very difficult to see with the glare in that one spot.
I'm just gonna get a beer, by the way. I'll be right back.
Thomas runs off to get a beer. I'm gonna sit here and play Factory and play an island. Down comes the Felwar Stone. I have 3 mana and white.
Felwar Stone.
So good to have on turn 2. It's just amazing how powerful that feels in a Moxless format. In the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, right? And in this format, the Felwar Stone is king acceleration because you're pretty much priced out of nearly all the other jewelry. So interestingly enough, so Mikl plays Strip Mine here and immediately just goes for Mishra's Factory. And it's kind of an interesting play. I can understand the reason to do it because I have a lot of powerful, impactful things that I can do at 4 mana. And by playing the Strip Mine, he might cut me off of 4 mana plays, potentially even 3 mana plays, since he doesn't know how much land I still have in my hand. And the one thing to consider, though, maybe is playing the Strip Mine and waiting to see whether I use the Factory defensively, and he can destroy the Factory in response to me activating it, which kind of ties up more mana. But he's really kind of in the beatdown plan here. By Strip Mining the Factory, it's going to clear the way for the Order Elite board for the foreseeable future. It's just a matter of deciding whether or not it's worthwhile to kill colored mana over the Factory. And in fact, based on the way my hand was and the fact that my deck is so hungry and double blue and double white mana, when I saw him kill Mishra's Factory, actually, I was relieved because it's very unlikely that I would actually activate my Factory earlier in the game when I couldn't protect it with one of my lower range cheap counter spells like Spell Blast or Power Sink. And sure, he might have to use a Divine Offering or a Disenchant to get rid of it. But if he's got red mana untapped, I can't really activate Mishra's Factory, at least not early, because having it killed and having a land destroyed for 1 red mana is just too impactful. So the Factory getting killed kind of sucks, but it's probably much more in my best interest than having an island or a future plains destroyed. just gonna.
So he's coming in with the order, putting Brian to 18.
It's actually 17, but not too important.
Brian's on 2 mana.
So there's the Tropical Island from my opening hand, and look what I just drew. Booyah. The Mighty Old Man of the Sea. And I talked about this card quite a bit in my deck. It actually, it showed up in, I think, game 1, but it didn't live very long because it just got blown up by a falling star. But my God, is this card a powerhouse against White Weenie. It is so incredible. If anybody who's played any 1v1 commander with blue decks is probably familiar with how good the card Vidalcan Shackles is and how it can just put your opponent in a complete bind where they really can't mount any kind of offense or really any type of defense as long as you control their creature and can attack with it. So basically, they can't block their guy because their guy will die and potentially their blocker will die as well, and you'll just take something else. And they can't really attack either for the same reason. So Old Man of the Sea, depending on what Mikl draws, can just pretty much lock him out of the game almost entirely. And I noticed that he has 2 planes and a strip mine already. His deck's not running a ton of land. It's only running 22. And it only runs 7 sources of red. And there's a reasonable chance that he doesn't have any red mana in play, which means that he just literally needs to have Swords to Plowshares in his hand. And I don't suspect that he actually has Plowshares, given the fact that he was so aggressive with strip mining Mishra's Factory. So I have a pretty strong suspicion this old man might stick around for a little while. And if it does, it's going to make Mikl's life very tough.
And an Old Man of the Sea. This is a really great turn 3 play for Brian.
Literally the best, probably.
Is really a fantastic card against all of Mikl's weenies. He can take, 9 out of 10 creatures that Mikl has.
Basically everything.
I don't know if Mikl's aware, but if Old Man attempts to take the order, Mikl can pump the order in response out of the Old Man's grasp.
Yep, that's correct. So basically, the Old Man of the Sea, specifically for those who aren't familiar with it, it's it says that it's a summon a Marid, which is like an old creature from D&D or something, an old Arabian lore creature. But it's actually been errated into a Djinn. I found that out actually last night when I was playing a test game against Dave Firthbard's finals White Weenie deck, and he's got a King Suleiman in his deck, and actually that came up in the game that a King Suleiman was in play, and I had Old Man of the Sea, and I checked its creature type because a lot of these old creatures have changed over the years in terms of as they've consolidated in the Gatherer and tried to make things more tribal. And it turns out that Old Man of the Sea, despite its appearances and the fact that it's just a 2/3, is in fact a Djinn. So King Suleiman can, in fact, destroy it. And more importantly, though, the other, as far as the text on the card is concerned, it's actually different from Vidalcan Shackles. Vidalcan Shackles only checks upon resolution about whether or not the creature is a legal target. If the creature gets bigger, substantially bigger, or even infinitely bigger, as long as the shackles remain tapped, you'll still gain control of the creature. But Old Man is different. Basically, he's sort of wrestling with the creature. And if at any point the creature's power gets higher than the Old Man's power, the Old Man of the Sea will actually lose control of it. So the interaction here would be, he's got Order Elite Board in play. I can grab it as long as it's a 2/1. But if you were to pump it in response, the Old Man's effect would be effectively countered, which is what Ken's referring to there.
So we'll see how Mikl responds here. I think I would attack and not pump.
I'm so relieved when I see that factory come down, and I think he may not have any red.
Old Man of the Sea, I like it.
Yes, yeah, it's going to be a real thorn in Mikl's side here, and the Old Man of the Sea might single-handedly win this game because these first 4 or 5 turns are where Mikl needs to jam through as much damage as he can, and if he's not able to eliminate this Old Man of the Sea, it's going to be tough hoeing.
Yeah, it's a perfect description.
Mikl has to attack with the order. Brian's not going to block with the Old Man.
Yep, 0% chance I would block, and yet he passes the turn to me, and I
think
essentially heal 3 there. Yeah, quite happy to not take 3 damage. Obviously, I would never block.
4 points of damage, right, that you talked about earlier. And of
Yeah.
course he wants to early.
So now drawn double white as well.
Wants to put a lot of combat damage in, trying to get him low enough for an X spell.
Yeah, he's just got to do everything he can. He doesn't want to sacrifice, but now
all the swords comes down so strong.
Going to come through for a long, long time, and so Mikl is in trouble at this point. This is what Brian wanted. So In response, Mikl should pump his knight or pump his order. Oh, he missed it.
Okay, so I think that Ken's a bit confused by the timing there. I'm obviously waiting until Mikl goes to his upkeep to gain control of his Order Elite board. And he could, in fact, tap his 2 white mana and respond by making the order a 3/1. The problem is that he would have a 3/1 creature. He would use up nearly all of his mana, and he still would not be able to attack for any damage because of the Wall of Swords in play. So he's kind of just in a terrible position there. And it definitely makes sense for him to go and just let me take the Order of Leaper. There really isn't any value in him just letting me time walk him by tapping Old Man of the Sea, particularly because the extra power of the Order of Leaper only lasts till the end of the turn. And of course, I'll just be able to untap Old Man of the Sea and grab it on my turn anyway. So he can't keep me from stealing it. And if he does, in fact, inflate the Order of Leap board there, he just wastes almost his entire turn and can't even attack for any damage. So totally correct for him to just let me grab his guy.
Maybe he doesn't know.
I think he definitely knows.
Yeah, that is. Oh man. I played against Mikl and I played Old Man of the Sea. Yeah. He asked me to read it to him. I don't think that he's familiar with the card.
And you don't see it often.
Yeah, you can't. You can't jump into a game and tell a player, "Hey man, read the card."
No.
But gosh, Mikl needs to answer this Old Man of the Sea, or this is going to be game soon. Because look, Brian has the mana to pump the knight.
Yeah, and then
when Mikl blocks with the factory, Brian says, "Okay, cool, they're both dead."
So he's actually, unfortunately, I can't actually use the card that way for the reason that I explained. That if I attack with the Order of Leapborn, let's say he activates his Mishra's Factory and throws it in the way of the knight, and then makes the factory a 3/3, I can't actually pump the order. Even though I have the white mana to do it, I can't safely get away with pumping up Order of Leapboard to 3/1. And the problem is because as soon as its power exceeds the old man's power, it'll wrestle free of its grasp, and Mikl will gain control of his own creature during combat, and the creatures won't actually fight each other because when creatures change sides of the board, they effectively reset in combat. So that doesn't actually work out, and I can't inflate the order beyond 2/1, beyond its base stats. That said, I can still attack with it happily. If he wants to just kill his own creature with his Mishra's Factory to save 2 damage, then that totally works to my benefit anyway, and I'll just untap Old Man of the Sea and take the next thing that he plays. So he's kind of in a bad spot either way. There isn't really any way to avoid taking 2, and this is sort of the conundrum that cards like Vidalcan Shackles and Preacher and Old Man of the Sea present.
Well,
fine.
Yeah, my old man, will untap next turn, and I'll beat you with that.
Yeah, let's see. I mean, he's kind of attack, right?
Right now I'm rummaging. I actually happen to have because I have a playtest version. I have Mikel's deck as a playtest deck, so of course I got an order handy lying around.
To clarify, right, that is Mikel's order because he's not casting the order.
Yeah. And Brian, I don't know if Brian's familiar with the old man either, because Brian did that after, I would just hold the old man up, and essentially I don't know. What are they discussing, I wonder?
I think maybe they're talking about the pumping right now. Maybe they're discussing it.
Yeah,
he's saying I could have pumped him, and Brian's saying, yeah, but you didn't.
Yeah, that may, but I don't recall exactly what Mikl was talking about. I think that Ken, the point that Ken was trying to make about whether or not I should just leave Old Man of the Sea untapped and just waiting to grab something, there's some validity to that. I can grab things at the end of Mikel's turn, but honestly, I just saw an opportunity here to just start dealing damage. My blue-white deck is a control deck fundamentally, but actually a lot of these games I can close out pretty quickly by just playing some big fatties and sending them across and dealing damage. I mean, just because my deck has control elements like Moat and Wrath of God and Spirit Link and Swords and counter magic and stuff, I am playing with a lot of creatures too, and I have some big fatties, and I'm not going to just sit back and miss an opportunity to start attacking with my opponent's creature and dealing damage to him. I mean, who knows? In 4 or 5 turns, I might actually deal 12, 14, 16 damage and be able to finish the game off with just a side blast or something. There's no reason not to attack, and I'd much rather be attacking with his creature over my own Old Man of the Sea, for example.
So he hit him for 2. I have Mikl at 18 and Brian at 18, and we're
But I think that's also the the cool thing when you're playing with cards that you don't see often. I mean, that's kind of, in a way, it's a reward for playing with original cards, right? That sometimes your opponent is confused
Yeah, that is true.
and doesn't know all the ins and outs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is pretty true, actually. And that's kind of one of the things that I think over time, as people gain more familiarity with 7-point Old School Singleton, unless the format really changes radically, people, I think, will get used to some of the cards that have kind of act as staples in the format that they aren't normally used to dealing with. And obviously, cards like Old Man of the Sea, you don't really normally see that guy. I've played him a fair amount in some other Singleton formats like Canadian Highlander, and it's always been one of my favorite cards in general. In fact, a deck that one of the very, very first decks that I ever built once I diverged away from playing my gigantic mono black deck. And this deck was probably built in the mid 1994, maybe April, something like that. And it had a 3-card combo. It was Old Man of the Sea and the card Blessing, the white enchantment that you can pump a creature's power and toughness by 1 for every white you invest, and Diamond Valley. And I would basically play my Old Man of the Sea, play Blessing on it, which protected it from most of the removal that people played back then. And then I would take their creatures by inflating the Old Man of the Sea, and before the Old Man shrank due to Blessing wearing off, I would sacrifice their creature to Diamond Valley and gain life and kill it. And people would get rather frustrated trying to deal with that situation, because if you're not playing with black or white removal, you can't really get rid of Old Man of the Sea with Blessing on it, and you can't really play any creatures either. So I've always sort of had a love affair with the creature. I always really like it. And it's just amazing having it be a tier 1 creature in a format again. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, Tanos' Coffin, Old Man of the Sea. There's a couple cards in Old School that are $100 cards now, I guess.
More than 100, actually. They're way expensive.
Say, I'm not going to invest in that. And if you never play with it, you don't really know exactly all the mechanics.
That's for sure true about Tanos' Coffin. My God, is that card confusing.
But Mikl is under pressure in the early stages of the game. Banala Shiro
comes down.
Okay, so this is good, right? The Banala Shiro, the Pendlehaven, and the Factory.
Wow. Yeah.
They can kill that Wall of Swords.
Actually, they can't, unfortunately. I think Ken might not realize that Wall of Swords actually has 5 toughness. It's not a 3/4, it's a 3/5. And Factory plus Pendlehaven plus Banal Shiro actually only deals 4 damage. So that huge, robust 5 butt stops even something as nasty as that.
I love how all those cards kind of stick together, and make these weird alliance. Like Mishra's Factory, Banana Shiro with the Pendlehaven. Yeah, of course.
It is true, though.
To kill a Wall of Swords. Right. Yeah, and this is what drew me into Singleton, is because when everything is unique and you're kind of, unfortunately forced to play with trash, you will find really oddball combinations and plays that have likely never happened in the history of Magic.
It's true. Definitely. That's why the format's a lot like a limited format sometimes. It feels that way, almost like a really, really good draft deck or something.
Okay, so my friend just texted me. He said Brian's play with the Old Man was to activate it on Mikl's upkeep. So even if he pumped it, on Brian's next turn, he would be able to untap and then activate the Old Man again for the now unpumped knight.
Okay.
So yeah, I think Brian had it figured out, and I don't know if Mikl was aware of the play, but in any event, I was entirely wrong.
Okay, so that's good to know.
Yeah. So he strips the Pendlehaven.
Well, I was wrong as well because he didn't correct it. This is interesting. He's taken the mountain.
Ooh,
interesting choice.
Oh wow.
So I'll talk about that for a second. This is, I think, the disparity in experience in this matchup going on between my own playing and the commentators. Ken and Thomas have not seen or played this matchup a bunch of times, and I certainly have. And the fact that Mikl only has 7 red sources in his deck, I believe just 6 mountains, or 5 mountains, a plateau, and a City of Brass. I believe it's 7. Means that if I can cut him off red mana, he may not draw red mana for a long time. And based on the way that mana has sort of unfolded this game, that he played Pendlehaven also, and played that strip mine and then a Factory, I feel like there's a reasonably high chance he doesn't have red in his hand right now. And if I can cut him off red for the foreseeable future, that leaves him with almost no outs against Old Man of the Sea. Remember, I have Counterspell and Disenchant in my hand right now. And what's also kind of funny, just as an aside thing, is that winning the game with Old Man of the Sea was never even really part of the plan. I didn't start with it in my hand, and I told you before about how I had Moat Disenchant Counterspell in my hand, and that was really all my objective was going to be. But hell, if the Old Man of the Sea can come down and make Mikel's life a nightmare and possibly even single-handedly beat him or get him to invest tons of resources, then so be it. I may not even ever have to use those counterspells or the Moat or anything. So that's at this point the principal plan has become the backup plan, and the Old Man is just going to continue to do his thing.
Okay. Okay.
And killing red
I
protects the Old Man
between,
without having to counter.
The Pendlehaven or the factory, but he's going for the mountain.
Yeah. Well, Brian knows what he's doing. He's very careful. Maybe or not. Oh, there it is. Okay, so
that's just bad.
Now,
punished.
Now we feel like it was kind of a wasted strip mine.
But you can't know, obviously. I don't know that he's got red, and for all I know, he did have red in his hand. One of the things I've noticed throughout this whole match is that Mikl has been so patient with the cards in his hand, and actually he's very, very good. His instincts, I think, are very, very good about holding cards in hand. I see a lot of people will tend to just draw a card and immediately sort of roll their eyes and just play it, and their hand size gets really low. And there's nothing that a control deck likes more in the whole world than an opponent with an empty hand. That is just it gives you perfect information, particularly with regards to your answers, and most importantly with your counter spells. If your opponent has 0 cards in hand and they play something, you have perfect information. You can decide at that moment whether or not the card is worth a counter spell, and you don't have to worry about a follow-up. And Mikl has made my use of counter magic much, much harder by holding a lot of cards in his hand and being extremely patient with that. And he could very well have had that mountain in hand and just played the Pendlehaven instead, and therefore got me to waste, as Ken said, waste a strip mine on something on a pretty innocuous red mana source over killing something more powerful like Pendlehaven or the Factory.
But
I think it's also a sign from Brian that he wants to put pressure on. He wants to keep pressure on, right? That's why he went for the mountain.
Yeah, it's more to protect the Old Man.
Well, he wants to keep his Old Man from getting bolted or a fireball.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Protecting the Old Man is really important in this match, because Brian is just going to continue to beat. The Old Man is going to, serve him up. Timmy, can you see that mountain that Mikl just played?
It's Christmas.
He drew Santa and the reindeer kind of flying over the mountain there on it.
That's right. He has these little cool altar mountains.
Did somebody make an altar?
I don't know. But Mikel's using a couple cards with like those kind of little Christmas theme altars.
See, look how nasty this is. I can just attack with his creature every turn. He can't even block it.
Right. So
this is such a brutal thing to be in.
The roles have reversed now. Old Man turns Brian into the.
Interesting to know about Old Man is that it's been errata into a djinn. So if you have a Case Alignment, you can actually kill the Old Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre.
I can't wait till that
happens. It almost happened last night.
What is it? What was Old Man before? It was Summon Majid or
yeah, something like that.
Marid.
Some kind of weird.
And I think it comes from the tail. Anyway, there's a whole story.
Okay. So he stops the bleeding here with the Spirit Link. So now what? Does Brian give back the Knight? I mean, I think he doesn't. I think he just keeps the Knight. And I mean, there's no.
Yeah, I'm just looking at like this because he cannot really bump it that big. Mikl the Knight.
I mean, what's he going to take if he takes the hero? I guess he takes the hero and then attacks with that just to eliminate a creature. He's probably working this logic through right now.
I am indeed, actually. I'm thinking this through here, and there's some value in me holding on to his creature with Spirit Link on it, but I kind of want to be able to still attack. And if I can't attack with his creature, I'd rather just have my Old Man of the Sea sit here untapped so that I can grab things at instant speed. I kind of, if I have the Old Man of the Sea untapped and he goes into combat, he may do things in combat like using his Pendlehaven on a creature, and maybe I can snag something in response and block with it and wind up 2-for-1ing him. So I feel that if I hold on to his Spirit Link guy, I'm just going to be sitting there with an untapped Order Leaper. Obviously, there's no reason to attack with it anymore since he'll gain the life back. And that loses any of the innate trickiness that the Old Man might be able to do during combat. I'd much rather have the ability to snag a 1/1 Bander in the middle of the combat step and potentially block with it or block and ban with the Wall of Swords. And depending on what Mikl sees, he might miss the fact that I can grab it at instant speed and ban with it or something. And so I feel that the untapped potential of the Old Man of the Sea is probably better than hanging on to a Spirit Link creature that I can no longer attack with. So that's what I'm sort of considering. I'm going through the different ideas. Obviously, I like having his most powerful creature as well, but fundamentally, I'd rather have a creature that I might be able to attack with in a pinch that doesn't have an enchantment on it that kind of renders it moot. This is also a little bit of a situation to demonstrate how Spirit Link, as a card, while it is very, very powerful, is a little bit of an awkward spell in Mikel's deck because it isn't really intrinsically aggressive. Life Gain is a very sort of defensive ability, and while Spirit Link can really screw over your opponent by playing it on something like a Serendib Refrita or a Jazam, it isn't really furthering the red-white deck's beat-down game plan very well.
It's true. That's also an interesting option.
What would you do?
I think I would do what you said. I would probably take the Banalish. But again, it's also very much dependent on what's in his hand. But I think I would untap.
So it's Mikl Spirit Link, right? If he allows the
But the thing is, the Banalish that has summoning sickness, that's a little bit annoying, right? You want to swing straight away.
Yeah. Oh, it's a merit. Someone said it's from D&D. I like it.
Yeah, we've got Thomas with us, right? So he can give us some points.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like Fred. Fred is commenting here. He says, Old Man is a merit. It's from D&D. Monster Manual 2. It goes along with the Jin, Freak, Dao, and Jan from the Elemental Planes.
So you can see, I ultimately decided to give him the order back.
Inspired.
Much more close to D&D and
Magic was once designed to be a quick game that you play during your D&D, like in between. Let's take a look. What's Brian doing here?
So I'm playing.
So he's giving back.
Playing Jayemdae Tome here, and this is definitely a card that I would protect with that counterspell at this point. Mikel's hand is fairly small right now, and he has shown tremendous restraint with regards to his artifact kill. And that doesn't. So the fact that my Fellerstone has lived all this time does not necessarily mean he doesn't have Disenchant or Divine Offering in his hand right now. But I figure if he does have Disenchant and he kills the Tome, that's obviously bad for me. But that means that the moat that's been in my hand this whole game will be nigh indestructible, given the fact that I have Disenchant in my hand. And as long as I keep 2 mana up forever, he'll never have a way of getting rid of moat. He has no way to interact with it left in his deck because we're playing Singleton. So testing the water with Jayemdae Tome is kind of a win-win for me. Either he answers it with something, and the range of things that answer it are quite small, or he doesn't have an answer to it, and I'm able to draw 2 cards a turn going forward. So either way, it works out for me. And you notice I've got the 6 mana in play right now, so I'm getting closer to that 8 mana that I mentioned before, where I will feel comfortable playing the moat. But at the same time, there's no reason to even play moat right now anyway. There's no reason to expose it. For all I know, I want Mikel to sort of go through strange contortions trying to get rid of this Old Man of the Sea. He might wind up doing something like playing an Acacian Javelineer and trying to use Javelin plus Aeolipile to kill off Old Man of the Sea, or maybe use Falling Star on it. I mean, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, he's giving the guy back. I guess there's no reason to hang on to it, right?
No, and he can always activate Jin again.
Yeah. So in Duelist number 1, Richard Garfield said one of the reasons that he went to Wizards and he was really happy with Wizards was that they wouldn't try to adapt the Magic game to the already existing universe. Right? So like if they already had a universe like LURPS or whatever that thing, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like if there's like a gaming company already has the universe, like say Settlers of Catan, they're going to try to make it like Wizards of Catan rather than making it its own standalone game.
So then you're hoping to sell all their games and promote it in one go instead of just one game.
Yeah, exactly.
Mikel is quite mana flooded here, I just wanted to point out. He's drawn 9 lands, which is kind of crazy.
Well, it's interesting, like if you read those early issues as well, and you read like interviews with artists, like I read one with Drew Tucker, where they asked him, why do you enjoy working for Magic so much? He said, well, I can just do whatever I want. Like they give me all the freedom. I just get a card name, and that's it. You know, it's so different than the way it is now.
Yeah, and I think that that's wonderful, the way that I believe it's pronounced Jesper Mirfors.
That's right, yes,
like,
Jesper.
Did everything, because you look at Wall of Swords, and it's, Anson Maddox, and he's, kind of out there, but super creative. And then Banalish Hero is just so traditional fantasy.
Yeah. And also so much the lady boy, how do you call it, top boy girl, right? That was very.
Finale
This
Chiro?
conversation's hilarious.
Yeah, right. Kind of reminds me of. She looks like the girl from Alien.
Sigourney Weaver.
Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I could see it. It'd be a good altar. You should get a play set of those and run it in the next event. So we're kind of in a standoff here. Brian's gonna, just try to get that book online.
You know,
get some and drop a big flying threat.
Yeah, and I think what I want to say is, when you're playing against a control player and you're in the standoff, it's not good.
No, it's not good. I think, just looking forward, I think Brian is gonna take this game if Mikl's not able to answer this merit or the shapeshifter that's now a Jin. Looks like a fatty, a trike. That's perfect.
Triskelion.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's perfect. So, Brian can't really respond if the trike hits the board. The trike is going to shoot, right? So
exactly. Oh, is he going?
He's going to power think for 2. Oh, tap this one instead. Oh, he's going to draw
a card first.
See if he can counterspell. I mean, the old man is that important at this point in the game.
Yeah, I probably would use Power Sync here just because it would tap him out. I know that there's no follow-up.
To play against a trike once it hits the board.
So I'm drawing a card to see if I get Power Sync there.
Difficult to play against an old man if you've got nothing but weenies.
That is so true.
So shooting the old man. Why is the old man tapped, I wonder?
He took the Manalish. You see the Manalish is upside down?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Manalish. So now Manalish comes back.
So Mikl accidentally throws his Triskelion in the graveyard. I don't even notice that because again we're not playing across from each other and everything is tiny on the webcam. But yeah, he plays Triskelion and he can kill the Old Man of the Sea. But as I said before, the Old Man of the Sea was always sort of the secondary option anyway. It was sort of like the little distraction going on in the corner while the real big show has been in my hands since turn 1. So I'm completely fine for him to use such a powerful resource, an actual 6-drop to kill off a 2/3 that I played on turn 3, when in fact I have the game nearly in hand anyway. And he does get his Banal Shiro back, but he's completely tapped out for the turn. The Wall of Swords is still holding the line here. And I'm very, very confident now that since Jamde Tome lived through the turn, that he does not have Disenchant in hand, which means that I no longer need 8 mana in play to safely play my moat. I'm 100% sure that if he had Disenchant, he would have killed Jamde Tome. So barring him having either Chaos Orb in hand and being the most patient man in the universe to not use it on Old Man of the Sea, I'm nearly certain now that Moat will be completely immune to the rest of his hand, and all I have to do is untap with Moat in play with Counterspell and Disenchant backup, and that reduces the entire range of everything that he can kill me with down to just a couple of cards. Plus I have the Wall of Swords in play to deal with most of his flyers anyway. In fact, the only flyer that can get through the Wall of Swords is the Shivan Dragon. So I'm feeling extremely confident about the outcome of this game already, given the fact that my Tome has also lived through the turn as well.
Summoning Sickness. He still can't attack because that wall's going to eat him alive. But at least Mikl can breathe a little bit, Yeah,
that's definitely good news for Miguel. He's still, if you're Miguel, you're looking at that Jamde Tome, you're like,
Yeah, you're not feeling good about that. Everybody's been in this position in Old School. So they noticed that Triskelion is in the graveyard.
Wouldn't the trike just be a 1/1?
Wow.
Yeah, it should still be in play as a 1/1.
Or did I miss something? He removed 3 tokens for the Old Man, but I think the trike should still be in play. I don't think it matters now with the Moat, but
down comes Moat, waiting in my hand since turn 1 to really seal this game up now that the Old Man of the Sea game is over. We had our fun with him.
Fred, are you listening? Someone see what happened?
I can at least send a message.
I mean, I don't want to break in there. I just didn't see anything go into the graveyard.
I'm just gonna send them.
Yeah, I think everyone is very puzzled by why the Triskelion's in the graveyard. I mean, as a 1/1, it's effectively dead anyway, but still, it's important.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
There it is.
He was probably like, it's useless now.
So I see him tap 2 mana and thinking, useless, oh man, please be Chaos Orb so I can just disenchant that.
It's a creature. He can give him the trike. There's implications later on.
Yeah, it can definitely matter.
Played in the Odal, which is the online Dutch league, which is quite nice. And I played against Florian, the German player, always, but in a lot of cases plays with robots, and as soon as he had the trike out, he started playing his copy artifacts on them. I was like, oh man.
Oh yeah, man, that's trike is my jam, dude. I frequently pilot trike decks. I love playing around with them.
So do you also do the trick with animate deck, copy artifact, all that stuff? In the box, out the box.
I found trike to be more effective if I just kind of use it in a toolbox.
Yeah.
So my trike deck is pretty different. I'm using mana vaults to transmute into a trike.
Okay.
Or my city in a bottle, or Tormod's or Tanos' coffin. You know, I kind of have a toolbox going.
Yeah.
It's an effective deck.
Do you play with Sage as well to get some card draw? I just love the value you get when you have a mana vault and you have a certain point where you get 3 manas from the mana vault and you get a card out of it. What?
Well,
Sage of
Latinam. Sage counts as the
yeah,
card.
It's kind of underplayed card,
Sage,
actually.
Right? It's only the second artifact you sacrifice that you can count as a real draw.
I love Sage, man.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. I think Sage with maybe Tentavis or whatever.
Tetravis, yeah, that's a card. Yeah. But also use the counters on your trike, and then later in the game you can sack it to the Sage, get a card back, or in response to a disenchant, get a card.
So you can see me discarding the hand size there. I'm actually already up to 8 cards in hand. At this point, my hand is just platinum. I believe I have Counterspell, Mana Drain, Control Magic. I don't think I have Wrath of God yet. I might even have Wrath of God in my hand. I have Brain Geyser now. My hand is just absolutely stacked to the moon. And we're really just going to sort of go through the motions here for a while. There are still some things that Mikl can draw to get himself back into the game. But the fact that I'm at 17 is just extremely problematic for the beatdown deck.
No, I don't.
You don't see it. You don't see it. Okay. Well, anyway, looking at this game, where are we at?
Brian is drawing cards. There's a Thunder Spirit. So he's going to be able to fly over the moat, but straight into a wall of swords.
So that's not going to help.
No. So right now, Mikl is looking for, and it's funny, right? Do you just fireball the wall of swords that you can actually attack? But I think Brian has this game closed out. It's just going to take a really long time.
Double tome action, just like last game.
Aye.
One tome begets the other one, usually.
I do like kind of the board state of Brian. You're having that wall of swords in the air and the moat on the ground, right?
Yeah.
He's like king in his castle.
I just want to make one comment about that. A long time ago, I wrote a series of articles about sort of the foundational principles of the deck. This goes back to all the way, well, before the modern internet, I think in the Usenet, maybe around 1995 or so. And one of the things that I talked about in that article, which appeared in the Duelist magazine, it's like in Duelist number 4 or 5, what it talked about was the principle of that card advantage exists not just through the conventional means. Obviously, Jam Day Tome provides card advantage, Brain Geyser provides card advantage, so does Ancestor Recall, but there's other types of card advantage in the game as well. And I kind of I conflated discard based card advantage to the same thing as draw based card advantage. And then more importantly, I talked about how there's different types of effects. Anytime you can actually nullify multiple cards of your opponents for a single one of yours, that's also effectively card advantage. And one of the reasons why the deck works so well is because it includes all of these cards that can take out 2, 3, 4, or 5, sometimes 8, 10, or even half your opponent's deck all by themselves. And Moat is such a great example of that. I mean, Moat it's such a killer against nearly every deck in the format. And for 4 mana, you can not only destroy multiple creatures in play effectively as long as the Moat stays out, but you can nullify upwards of a dozen future draw steps, cards that they haven't even drawn yet. And anytime you can make cards your opponent draws completely irrelevant through the mid portion or even late into a game, it's gonna be really, really hard to lose. And you can even win without ever casting any counterspells. You can win without drawing extra cards. Cards like Moat and even Wall of Swords can just nullify so many things by themselves that they are all quasi card advantage wrapped up into a package that doesn't necessarily look like that. And this game is such a great principle of that in effect. The Old Men of the Sea, an absolute crazy card advantage engine against a weenie deck. Wall of Swords kills potentially 5, 6 creatures all by itself. And Moat, of course, stops more than half of Mikel's deck. So the combination of all these effects in play at the same time, pretty backbreaking and hard to stop.
Yeah, well, Brian doesn't have to play anything. So he's just going to sit there and continue to look at 3 cards a turn. If 2 of them are land, he's just pitching it to the tome, the paperback. I mean, Brian is just in complete control. He's probably got a handful of answers, but he doesn't need to use them on anything. So Mikl is 1 damage away from being able to kill that Wall of Swords. Okay, a Preacher. So now here is a wrinkle, right? He can take the Wall of Swords. He's finally seen an opening, but I have to feel like Brian has an answer to that Preacher.
I may.
He's got too many cards in his hand not to have something for that Preacher,
True.
Yeah, I've hardly cast anything this game if you think about it.
See what he's going to do. I mean, he's got some time. Preacher's got summoning signals.
Yeah.
Probably
maybe he's deciding whether the Preacher resolves. Oh, okay. So he's. Oh, wait.
So I have 8 mana untapped at the end of the turn. That allows me to defend against Disenchant at instant speed with Counterspell. So I can safely draw 2 at the end of the turn here.
He's using both. Just like, hey, I got it. He's just gesturing towards it,
So Mikl checks to make sure that I have what mana I have untapped afterward, which is a really, really good habit to be in, I think. And I demonstrate that I've got 2 blue untapped.
No, I think it was just showing to Miguel that he had enough mana to activate the roll.
Yep. Yeah. All right. So put that back. Oh. Hey, there's a stand-up play. Grab 2. Put one back.
Sticky sleeves.
That helps.
Island of Wak-Wak. Just when he had a way to potentially start getting through.
Yeah.
He's still fine.
So he'll say, yeah, sure, you can borrow the Wall of Swords. I don't need it right now because your Thunder Spirit has 0 power.
That is the right word for it, actually. Borrow it, right? Because as soon as Brian finds a solution to a Preacher, if he wants to, or maybe he has it still, he can just get rid of the Preacher, get the Wall back.
Yeah.
It's like he's.
I mean, if you've ever watched Brian play, this is exactly how he's going to proceed. He's only going to answer something when he absolutely has to. The level of patience that he's developed over the years is just it's nearly unparalleled. I don't know that I've watched anyone who's as patient as him with the answers.
It's a very, very nice thing, a very nice compliment from Ken. I do have to say that I would say that patience is something that's sort of the net product of, thousands and thousands and thousands of games of playing control decks over the years. I mean, I've been playing the game since January of 1994 and started playing Control just a few months after that and pretty much never stopped. To this day, I actually play a fair amount of 1v1 Commander. And when I play Commander, I'm almost always playing some form of a control deck as well. And I've certainly cultivated the patience necessary to play control decks, I think, up to a high level of capability, particularly in a format like this one where you have to really think through a lot of the things. Every decision has to be quite meticulous and careful because you're dealing with a finite set of answers and a finite set of threats that you are trying to deploy against your opponent. But really, I mean, in a game like this, sometimes the games are just on autopilot. You notice actually how I haven't had to really play much of anything, and I haven't had to play any counterspells at all. And as Ken described, I'm basically just going to. I know exactly what Mikl has left in his deck that can answer this situation, and so I know that even though he has a few cards in his hand, I just know that there's only a tiny range of things that I actually have to interact with at this point. So everything else is sort of incidental to that, and I'm going to try to answer whatever he does in the most efficient way possible that leaves the best answers in my deck still in my hand for later use. So for example, I mean, he could play Preacher. Obviously, I could counterspell it, but there's no real reason to counterspell Preacher. He can have my Wall of Swords because I have Island of Wak-Wak to stop the Thunder Spirit. So unless the situation changes, I'd much rather answer the Thunder Spirit with Island of Wak-Wak than use counterspell to stop Preacher to keep my Wall of Swords.
So again, end step, right? Gesturing to the book, also using the paper bag. And it makes sense for Miguel to at least just take the wall, right?
I don't know what Miguel's looking for other than a disenchant. But it's hard to imagine that a disenchant on the moat resolves.
Yeah.
With the amount of cards that Brian's drawing, I just have to assume he's going to I guess the best thing against a disenchant is going to just be a spell blast.
Oh,
there we go.
Now it's like we're watching the deck, right?
It very much looks like the deck. Scepter Moat.
He's going to say, you don't need one of those. I'd like for you to figure out which one you like least.
I think if you're Mikl, you're now, am I going to forfeit and go to the next game?
Yeah, it's such a bad feeling at this point.
I think he just goes to the next game. But, he's going to play it out. He's got a disenchant.
He's got a few options, yeah.
He could, I guess he doesn't have Dust to Dust, but it's hard to see Miguel forcing through anything that Brian doesn't want, And the Scepter just, it puts a clock on it.
And Brian's on 17, that's the biggest
I've only been hit one time this whole game, actually. It's crazy.
Yeah. Okay, Divine Offering.
So Mikl casts Divine Offering on Jam Day Tome here and elects to do that over Disrupting Scepter. Obviously, he's got his back against the wall here. I'm sure he knows I have Recall in my deck and that this may only be a temporary countermeasure. And as I said before, I have Brain Geyser in my hand. I've had it in my hand for a long time, but obviously no reason to cast it, given the fact that my hand is already stacked completely and I have max hand size. So when he kills Jam Day Tome over Disrupting Scepter, I'm actually quite happy for that. It's one less answer gone from his deck, and of course the Tome is all but redundant. I already have a GLM Tome in play. I have the ability to draw another 10 cards from my deck if I actually wind up needing them. The Scepter will beat his hand down in short order and prevent him from being able to double up on any type of X spell that might actually win him the game. So no question whatsoever that I'm going to let the Jam Day Tome die without any type of resistance. And I actually am not going to even bother to draw an extra card off of it. And the reason is for the reason I've been explaining all along. He has, I think, 3 or 4 cards left in hand, and he has been exceedingly patient, as I said before, about holding back on things. And even though he hasn't killed Moat for a long time, he may be actually waiting until he has multiple ways to kill it in one turn, hoping to get around my counter magic. And if I were to draw a card here and go down to 2 mana, he might be able to go and have Disenchant and Chaos Orb and actually get rid of that Moat and get right back into the game all of a sudden and put me in a really, really bad spot. So there's no way I can lose the game, I think, if I let the Jam Day Tome die without drawing, and I could introduce the possibility of losing the game by actually getting greedy and drawing 1 extra card. So, and I can always draw 1 card off JLM Tome regardless, and just cycle instead of just increasing my hand size by 1. So that's why I don't draw.
Okay.
Probably going to use it in response, right? If not, it means he really wants to keep his counter options.
Yeah, he's keeping his counter magic up because I think he realizes that Moat is going to win him this game if he can. He's got the Moat, he's got the Island of Whack Whack.
Oh, he's got dogs.
Dog attack.
Do you have dogs?
Mesa Pegasus. So you can see what I was talking about as far as patience. So Mikl clearly has one of these cards in his hand already and elected not to use it. So he gets a Mesa Pegasus onto the table. At least he gets a flyer out.
JLM Tome on the end step.
Throwing away that useless steel artifact, which has been complete brick against Mikel's deck.
Not really a good.
He has basically 1 target. Actually, he has a Soul Ring in his deck, but he never ever drew it. He never drew his 4-point card.
Probably a good option.
Poor McKelly looks a little bit exhausted there. He kind of puts his head down for a second.
Again and play this one out. And I guess what Mikl can do next turn is attack with the Pegasus and the Thunder Spirit.
No, it goes White Knight. He's down to 2 cards in hand.
You see Mikl discarding his White Knight. He's not looking too happy, which I can absolutely imagine.
Me too. I can understand that completely. We've all been there before.
There we see an island.
Sorry about that. My dog was notifying me that the mail has arrived.
Sweet. Any cards in the mail?
No, not today. I got a couple winter orbs yesterday. Too late for the winter derby, but I was happy to receive them.
Winter Orb's a good card.
Yeah, the unlimited are, just the some of the unlimited cards just really look differently with the better the better print,
Yeah,
and
they
Winter
sure
Orb
do.
is one of those. I
Winter
think it's
Orb
absolutely
looks
beautiful.
so nice as
Look at
unlimited
this.
or beta.
Miguel is able to deal damage. He casted a Pegasus while you were gone, and now he's able to attack with it with the Thunder Spirit. So Island of Whack Whack on the Thunder Spirit, and then he uses Pendlehaven, gets 2 damage in.
Yeah. So it looks like Mikl has Brian at 15.
Yeah.
And then Mikl is at 20.
I think still at 20, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I had Mikl at 18 after that 4-point divine offering, but I'll defer to them. I think Brian would speak up if Mikel's dice were not accurate.
Yeah, truthfully, I'm not paying attention to his dice. I have my own 20-sider for him. That green die is Mikel's life.
Just using the Scepter.
Scepter continues to beat his hand down to nothing.
I think at this point, Brian is okay to trade, to just let the Pegasus, if that's what he's got, Pegasus comes in for 2, but
it's not too bad.
Got a fatty. Oh.
Yeah. So I'm casting Wrath of God here. I've actually had this in my hand for a while, and I decided after he cast Mesa Pegasus, obviously I know he has Pendlehaven in play, but I figured that he might actually overextend and play another creature, another flying creature that gets around the moat. Maybe Granite Gargoyle, maybe if I get lucky, Sarah Angel or Shivan. And I felt like it was probably worthwhile to at least wait 1 turn to see whether or not, 1, he pumped the Pegasus, and 2, whether he played another flyer before I cast Wrath of God to kind of clear out everything on the board. But I'd like to stay at 15. He does have a fair amount of mana in play already. It looks like it's at least 8 mana in play. So I decided I don't want to drop down to the point where I can die to 2 red burn spells. And as I said before, I've still got multiple counters in my hand, at least 2 hard counters, but I don't really have any reason to play those. I'd rather just preserve my life total, and Wrath of God's not really doing much. I can deal with, this puts me ahead +1 against his flyers, unless one of those flyers is Shivan Dragon. So I feel like this is probably about the right time to cast Wrath of God. And I'm reaching a stage in the game also where I've drawn so many cards, I'm probably going to be drawing into my own big creatures pretty soon here, and I'd rather clear the board out before I start playing them.
Wrath of God. So he's going to clean everything up.
Interesting. And then maybe he's going to play something big after. So probably wants to keep mana open again, right?
Well, if he Wraths to God, he just cleans everything up, puts Mikl into a position where there's almost no way for him to recover, because we got to assume that Brian's going to protect the moat, and he's got the island. So now Mikl needs 2 flyers to push any damage through, and I think Brian's defenses are just going to be too good. And
so what is he going to do here? And of course, it freezes just about when he's okay. There we go, Sarah Angel.
And getting back to what I was saying about patience, I wasn't able to track exactly where that card was in his hand, and I didn't actually see him draw a card that turn. So I think his side of the screen was actually frozen. But that Sarah may have very well been in his hand this whole time, and he was patient enough not to play it last turn when I was essentially trying to bait him to play another flyer before I cast Wrath of God. He elected to cast the Pegasus first, understanding that dealing 2 damage that I have to respond to is probably sufficient enough and allows him to keep the 4/4 flyer in his hand to potentially add some pressure to the board later on. So incredibly disciplined if in fact he was holding on to that Sarah, and I would not be surprised if he was.
But Brian's okay with that. I don't think he responds. I think he just lets it happen.
Yeah, he's got the island.
He just touched his island. He goes, "My precious."
I'm good.
I think I was reaching for
I'm okay.
the Jalen Tone.
Still king of the castle.
Yeah, we'll send Sarah on a all expenses paid trip to Whack Whack.
Here we go. Yeah, and then hand is just getting thinner and thinner.
Yep, down to 1 card now.
Oh, the pikeman. If you look at that angel, it's got a stamp on it. I think that is a Singleton champion.
It's being stolen here. Swords to plus here.
Yeah, no choice but to do that right now. Might as well gain the life when it's on your side of the board.
Yeah, so now I think Mikel's only path to victory is to hope that Brian decks himself, but I don't see that happening. I think that this one's over. If I'm Mikl, I might just pack it in. He's probably thinking about it right now, but
is there anything in Brian's library, by the way, to use the archaeology stuff?
I think he means graveyard, and I do have Jamde Tome in my graveyard right now. But actually, I'm playing the Argivian Archaeologist. I know that he has Aelopal in play, but I kind of want him to just use Aelopal. I don't need the Archaeologist. Again, I have Brain Geyser in my hand, and Brain Geyser will almost certainly deliver Recall, which will get me anything back I want anyway. So I'm kind of actually just playing the Archaeologist here as a lightning rod for him to use Aelopal on. And because I also have Preacher in my deck as well. And I'd rather him just kill the Archaeologist. I don't really need the Jamde Tome anymore. And but it's a bit of a test to see if he in fact if he acknowledges that he has the Aelopal in play, and he might in fact let the Archaeologist die or let the Archaeologist live if he doesn't perceive it as a threat. He may be more concerned about my life total. We saw in the other game how he just used Aelopal on my life total before he had the ability to kill me. So I figured he might be thinking of it just as an extension, a burn spell.
Yeah, he's got the book. He's got the Jamde Tome.
Of course, he's got the tome.
Yeah. I feel like he should have Aelopiled that Archaeologist.
Yeah,
that was definitely the time to do it before I untap.
So even if he used the Aelopile now, the Archaeologist can still use it in response and get the book back. Yeah,
but
you're right.
I'll be honest with you. I don't know that Brian even needs the book at this point.
Yeah,
Mikel's hand is empty.
Time has passed.
He's pretty much dead drawing because he doesn't have the preponderance of flying creatures. Wow. Okay, now this is going to be dangerous. So he's just going to start blowing up his land.
So I announced the orb, thinking of course he's going to kill the Archaeologist in response, but he leaves the Aelopal untapped.
If it would be Miguel, even in response, he would use the Aelopal.
Yeah.
Then, right, on the cast.
Yeah.
But he's not doing it. And now he's using a chain.
And I figured he'd just kill the Archaeologist this way, or at least...
because the Aelopile is uncounterable. So is he just chaining Brian's face? Yeah. And Brian says, yeah, I'm happy to go to 12. You don't have any more of those left.
Yeah, he's just...
Actually, Brian could send it back with the Felwar Stone and the Volcanic.
Ooh, cool. That would be spicy. And then, but then of course Miguel could send it back to 3 as well.
So given the fact that he just chain lightning me over the Archaeologist, I actually decide that I'm just going to let the Archaeologist hang out, and maybe he'll just get impatient and hit me with Aelopal, and then I'll be able to just start recycling Chaos Orb if I need to. So this is actually why I elect not to draw Jamde Tome back into my hand. Again, when you're staring at Brain Geyser and you've got whatever I have, 13 or 14 mana in play, you're kind of already effectively at the bottom of your deck anyway, and I don't really view the Tome as being particularly useful. So I actually decide to just stealth the Archaeologist here by not using it and potentially not getting Mikl interested in it, so that I can use it later on to start recycling Chaos Orb. I mean, at this point where I'm kind of, none of this stuff really matters all that much given how strong my hand is and how unlikely it is for him to come back. But sort of figuring, well, might still continue to play as efficient and thoughtful as possible. So that's why I'm not bringing the Jamde Tome back right now.
He doesn't want that.
I kind of just want to get some
pitches the Serendipity.
some
That's how
bigger
in
creatures.
Control of this game he feels.
Yep, very, very good read by Ken.
I'm just now looking at Miguel's list.
I have no reason to play Serendip because it actually deals damage to me.
He's got a Granite Gargoyle, but that's not going to get past. That's not going to get past the orb, the whack. It's kind of game over. If Brian really wants to put the screws to him, he'll just start blowing up his lands with the Chaos Orb and returning it with the Archaeologist. But I think maybe he's holding it back because he realizes once he starts using the Archaeologist, Mikel's going to try to kill it with the Aelopal.
Exactly right.
So it's also interesting, like Ezra Drake or Ghost Ship. Like I understand, Ezra Drake is 1 blue and 3.
Yeah.
But if we look at the list of Brian, I mean, he's got so many blue sources, only playing with 2 colors.
There goes land tax again.
Could be worth it.
So silly.
Oh yeah, I think I would be using Ghost Ship, but you know.
Yeah, Brian probably thought about it and did all sorts of calculations.
I did actually. I thought about it a lot, and ultimately decided. Again, I'm just a person who firmly, when it comes to deck construction, I firmly am a believer in consistency over potential. And I just know that whenever I have one blue mana and don't have a second one, that Azure Drake is castable and Ghost Ship isn't. And yeah, Ghost Ship is a better creature, certainly if you've got two islands in play to cast it. But a lot of the time, not only, even when you have two blue in play, you don't necessarily want to tap both your islands to cast a 2/4 flyer, because you might need to keep blue mana untapped to cast Spell Blast or Power Sink or Counterspell or Mana Drain or one of the cards that just sort of keeps you in the game. And the fact that the Ghost Ship requires two blue mana, and the only way it's better than Azure Drake is when you're regenerating it, which is such a narrow fringe case. And yeah, there are certain weird situations where you might have a Ghost Ship in play that's beating your opponent down, and he can't kill it with his Psy Blast, or he can't disc it away or something. But the consistency of Azure Drake, the fact that it costs one blue mana, and you can play it off of generic mana so easily, to me, elevates it above Ghost Ship, and that's actually the reason why I'm using it.
That was my thought as well. Looking at his list and the fact that he's only playing two colors and so many blue sources.
Yeah, I went overboard on both blue and white because all the playtesting that I did in this format, the fact that there's no fetches and it's singleton format, you just have a lot of games where you draw an abundance of one color, and sometimes you don't even get your second color at all. And I just wanted to make sure that I didn't lose games to mana. It's hard enough to just have the right threats and answers at the right time. Adding mana and the inconsistency with your colors to that equation just complicates things and just introduces a whole level of variance that you can opt out of by just playing a ton of blue and white sources and as many cards that cost a single color as possible. And even with that criteria, my deck still has so much double white and double blue in it anyway. Anything I can do to mitigate that, I'm gonna try to do.
Yeah. Maybe he didn't own a Ghost Ship. I mean, who knows?
Who knows? Getting a little bit of damage in here.
You might actually be right about that.
Right now, I'm actually just hoping that Brian is going to play just a big fat creature. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Sarah Angel.
Look at that.
This is.
I just got to pause for a moment because it's kind of beautiful. The deck trifecta is complete. Sarah Angel, Moat, Scepter. Those were the three foundational cards for the original of the deck that kind of dominated the game between mid 1994 up until the late 90s. And a lot of people in modern day think of the deck as being a Jam Day Tome deck, but it actually wasn't back in that era. I only ran a single copy of Jam Day Tome in my version of the deck for years, while I ran two Disrupting Scepters, because the deck was fundamentally a Disrupting Scepter deck. It did not need to draw lots of cards with Jam Day Tome, because when you're running 4 mana drains, you can just sit back with tons of blue sources and wait for your opponent to try to be proactive and punish them for doing it. And nobody was tapping out at 4 mana to play a Jam Day Tome, because everybody ran a million artifact kill, particularly the control decks did, and everybody was playing with 4 copies of Mana Drain. And if you tried to cast something big like a 4 mana artifact and your opponent had a Mana Drain for it, you would often lose the game, because the counterplay would be something absolutely lethal like Brain Geyser or Time Walk Time Twister or Mind Twist or something else like that. So these 3 cards would very, very often be in play at the same time and completely force your opponent out of the game. So cool, at least from my perspective, from my side of the table, to see all 3 of them in play once again at the same time. Ah, sweet memories.
It's going to be wrapped up fairly quickly here. Okay, so it looks like Mikl has himself at 20. I think he's coming to the realization now that, okay, so he didn't even cast that.
Wow, then it must be really like mediocre.
What is he going to orb?
Just anything.
So I'm actually activating Chaos Orb. Well, I'll explain in a second.
In response, Mikkel's going to use it finally
Yeah.
on the Archaeologist, right? So you don't want to do that.
Yeah, no, because if he orbs the Aeolipile, he's reminding him that it's in play. Oh, he just touched it, so he knows that it's in play. Okay.
Oh, this is so interesting.
He's saying, I'm activating Chaos Orb.
Yeah, do you want to respond? Because then you don't have to
Do
say...
you want to respond?
Yeah,
and then he said, yeah, I'm going to Aeolipile your Archaeologist.
So this is sort of a weird and confusing thing, and I've heard conflicting rulings about this, and I would still actually love to hear, maybe in the comments of this video, if somebody is more up on the rules for 7-point Old School Singleton about how this is actually played currently. But I believe that the rules based on what one of my earlier opponents said, is that you activate the orb and you don't actually declare a target until the orb is resolving. So that's how I meant to play it against Mikl. I said, I'm going to activate Chaos Orb at the end of your turn. Do you have a response? He said, no, I have no response. At which point I said, okay, I'm going to designate your Aelopal as my target and I'm going to flip at it. At which point Mikl said, oh, well, I'm just going to use my Aelopal and I'm going to throw it at your face. And I actually think that that's the right play too. I think that killing my Archaeologist at this point in the game doesn't really give him any chance. The only way he wins this game is if he gets my life total a little bit lower and the top of his deck is running burn spells and I have no counters somehow. That's the only way he's going to win. The Archaeologist doesn't really affect the game, so I totally agree with the decision to use Aelopal on me. But he needs to do that, I believe, before I actually say that I'm going to be attempting to flip the Chaos Orb at Aelopal. And if he activates the Aelopal in response to me activating Orb, then I get to choose a different target with it, as far as I know. But the problem is that Mikl is from France, and there's a bit of a language barrier, and we're playing on webcam. It was very, very difficult to explain that. And given the fact that it was fairly moot in this situation anyway, it didn't really matter all that much. I ultimately just elected to just put the Chaos Orb in the graveyard, as effectively sort of saying that I aimed it at the Aelopal and then it fizzled because he sacked the Aelopal in response. Since I have Archaeologist anyway, I can get it back, so it doesn't really matter. But it'd be interesting to see exactly what the ruling is so that we can have a consistent way that this card is treated and this interaction is treated going forward, so there isn't confusion for other players.
No, the life total.
The life total.
I don't understand this play. Well, I mean, not that it matters that much, but
yeah, I guess he sees the writing on the wall. It doesn't matter. He's got to draw. He's got to draw fire. He's got to draw runner.
I think
fireball, earthquake, disintegrate to pull this off.
Maybe
so we're talking about. Yeah, we're talking about whether or not I can target something else. And eventually I decided to throw the orb away. It doesn't really matter too much, since I can just get it back anyway.
You don't have to say what you're going to target. And then your opponent will have to respond before knowing what the target is going to be.
What's nice, though, actually, incidentally, given my accuracy from game one, is that me putting the orb just straight into the graveyard saves me the embarrassment of potentially missing with it on camera again. So I'm grateful for that.
And I think that's what they're now maybe discussing.
So how did he get the orb back, I wonder?
Yeah, with the Archaeologist, right?
Oh, right, because he didn't kill the Archaeologist. Oh, yeah, because he just did 2 damage. So now Brian plays the orb. Well, Brian makes him discard a card, and then he plays the orb, and then he proceeds to just start breaking all of Mikl's land and attacking him for 6 every turn. I mean, this is going south fast. This is over.
In come the Flyers.
Brian's at 10.
Yes, at 10. He doesn't even. Let's say in perfect world, Mikl would draw Fireball, top deck. Does he have enough land? Brian has a counter spell, but if he doesn't,
I think Mikl didn't draw it. I think he's realizing it's over here.
And he doesn't even have enough land then. That would be like in a dream scenario where Brian wouldn't counter it. But we see a little freeze on Mikl's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe Mikl played a Savannah line and discard the orb and draw it again. This is like a little squee bazaar of Baghdad action going on.
The way that Brian lays all of his permanents out, none of them stacked, it's so funny because it's just like, hey, look at all that I've got, and you've got nothing.
Yeah, unfortunately, my table size to accommodate the webcam is a little bit too small to do that perfectly. Yeah. And I didn't even notice him playing Savannah Land. Apparently, his screen was frozen for me too.
He's gonna swing, gonna go down to 8.
10. 8.
Yeah, because he's dealing 6, right, with the Azure Drake.
Okay.
There's the Orb and the Preacher.
Yeah, he's not getting anything. And yeah, there's nothing.
Playing the land tax. I think Miguel's right. I'm gonna play this.
I'm not the only one who draws land tax at the wrong time.
He's just trolling right now. Come on.
And that's actually something like I've had games against the deck at tournaments where you're looking at the clock.
The
right?
tortoise.
So okay, I'm gonna concede now, so they have more time to possibly win our second game.
So I'm aiming at the lion here.
It's going to be really long against these control decks.
So he's going to try to hit the moat, or no?
What do you mean? He's flipping, right? One of his creatures.
Yeah. Well, because if he had taken the moat, and then stolen, I guess the creature had summoning sickness, but he could have orbed the moat, taken the lion, and then swing with the archaeologist, the angel, the drake, and the lion for the win.
Yeah, it's interesting. He's got the factor in play, though. Although I do have a disenchant for it.
Why
but
would he orb his own moat?
I have a different play in mind.
Just to be able to attack for 3 extra points and end it.
Okay, yeah.
Go out with a bang.
Brian is a little bit too controlling for that, right?
No, I'm still going to win the game on this turn.
He's not going to do it flashy. He's just going to...
So it's funny the commentators don't see this here.
Put him in.
The commentators don't actually quite notice what I'm doing here because they can't hear the audio, but I imagine that some of the people watching the game can see what's happening here. So at the end of the turn, I use Chaos Orb to blow up the Savannah Lion. I get the orb back. And then I just simply tap Preacher and gain control of his Acacian Priest, which you can pay 3 mana to give +1/+1 to any creature, and I've got an abundance of mana to do that with. And all I need to do is an extra 2 points of damage. So that's exactly what's happening here. I grab his Acacian Priest, pay 6 mana to increase Serra Angel to 6/6, and smash him for the final 8 points of damage to close out this game.
2.
I'm doing my best to explain it right here, that I'm using his priest to pump my guys.
We're discussing a little bit.
So I'm pointing at the angel and saying I pump this to 6 damage, and 2 from the Drake is 8. At which point, Mikl says, it's yours.
Yeah, he picks up the cards that say. Yeah, of course, mode says creatures without flying can't attack, so that goes for both sides. Of course.
All right, and with that, we bring Game 3 to a conclusion. Whew. Definitely not the barn burner that the last game was. Really, I had just about as good a draw as I could hope for from my deck. Turn 2 Felwar Stone into perfect mana, blue, white, along with Old Man of the Sea, and Mikl had no answer to it, which is extremely lucky for me. He had no Plowshares, no Bolt, no Chain Lightning, no Fireball, no Disintegrate, no Earthquake. Really no way to deal with it at all. And as expected, that creature just crushes white weenie decks and can even crush pink weenie if he doesn't draw any burn spells. And even though the Old Man of the Sea was pretty much winning the game on its own, I always had the backup plan of the moat anyway and could deploy that once he finally dealt with Old Man of the Sea. But this game was never really in doubt. The commentators were well aware of that the whole time. And so now I'm up 2-1. This is a best of 5, however, so Mikl is not out of it. And there'll be another game coming up pretty soon. I hope to record it in the next couple of days. Thanks so much for sticking around and watching this. I know that this was a long game with a lot of lulls and some downtime, but hopefully it was worth watching. And I hope to see you guys all soon for the next one. Take care.